So let us continue with the information security and from where we left off. Let's say, so let's talk about software vulnerabilities. So the vulnerabilities can be either software or hardware. So there are hardware infused vulnerabilities and software infused vulnerability. Well, there are more vulnerabilities because of software, simply because softwares can be, because they're commercial, first of all, and they can it is created by using some codes, and those which is software programs, and those software programs, if they're not tight enough, in the sense they have some defects, then it could be a vulnerability as well, rather than a hardware. So not much in hardware, but more in software. Okay, that you can see the differences basically. Bugs are defects in programming. So when people program softwares like, let's say, PowerPoint slides or Word and things like that, they actually PowerPoint itself, the PowerPoint software and the Microsoft Word software, Microsoft Excel software, when they do all these, it's all done by programming. There are codes behind it. These codes are in basic English, basically, but it has its own language. It's written in English, but it has its own language. Just like you can see that Spanish is written in English, but then Spanish is its own language, right? Something like that. So bugs are defects in when people program, when they do the coding. Programming and coding are pretty much the same. Code is basically the script which is written, and the program is actually typing it up. So program code defects means basically defects that are found when people are programming. Zero defects cannot be achieved. It's absolutely impossible because every code has some problems or other, unless it is tested and tested and tested and verified, and finally you get a bug-free program code. Flaws can open networks to intruders. Whenever there is a problem in software, it can create, because it is going to hang. And the software is going to hang. That means it's not going to do anything. And in those still moments, it is vulnerable. And also the flaws can, because the networks themselves are looking at various software and pushing everything together. That means assembling it and things like that. There could be some problems because intruders can find a way through that to enter the system. Okay. So for that, what happens is Microsoft, for Word or Office and things like that, Microsoft sends a lot of small pieces of software called patches. And these patches are basically, it's like when you have a cloth and we have holes and you put a patch to cover those holes, right? Something like that. So these are software patches that are sent by Microsoft. And your computer and my computer will download that from Microsoft, and then it'll install the patches basically, so that the vulnerabilities are reduced. And Microsoft does that over and over again, over and over, forever. They've been doing this. Okay. Now, what is the business value of this security and control? We talked a lot about security. We talked a lot about different types of security. But then when you want to control the security, what is the business value to it? See, the problem is this. If the computer systems fail, there is a lot of business losses that can occur. So the failed computer systems can actually lead to very significant or even total loss of business functions. And firms are more vulnerable than ever simply because we are all using internet. So anybody can enter through the internet into the company systems. And the companies have confidential personal and financial data which can be compromised. And you don't want that. right? And also on top of that, companies have trade secrets. They have new products that are coming up. There are strategies that they're working on. And all these things can be compromised, can be taken by somebody else and somebody else and some other country and all that stuff. So there is a big problem here. And controlling security is of utmost importance to many companies. Because, and again, any security breach can cut into a firm's market value almost immediately. Okay. And the problems are inadequate security, inadequate controls. All these things are liabilities for companies. To control this whole information security part of it, there are certain laws that have been enacted by US. One such law is called HIPAA. HIPAA basically is for medical security and privacy. So when you go to a hospital and then you are diagnosed with something, flu or fever or whatever it is, that is your health and nobody else should know that. Okay? And to do that, there is the Health Information Protection, a law that has been passed, which is called HIPAA, HIPAA. And this makes sure that hospitals and pharmacies and medical providers and everybody else who are with who hold medical records, they're supposed to hold on to your records and not let it out. And that is they cannot let it out or give it to anybody else. So these laws have been there for quite some time now, and these laws are enforced by the government. There are two more acts that have been passed as well. One is called the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. This is basically for financial data. It requires financial institutions to ensure the security and confidentiality of customer data. So customer data is important, and customer financial data is really important. And to make sure that the security and confidentiality of these data is held within the company and not leaked out, that is where this Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act comes up. There is also another act called Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which is, many people call it SOX, S-O-X. And the Sarbanes-Oxley Act imposes responsibility on the companies themselves and their management so that they can make sure that their financial information is accurate and the integrity of the data is maintained and it is used internally, and also when releasing it externally, it has to be absolutely accurate and the integrity is there. The problem came when a lot of companies started using what are called smart accounting techniques. That means accounting to fool everybody else. And when they started doing that, there are 2-3 companies which bellied up. WorldCom from this country was one of them. Enron was another company. There was another one which actually had some problems with all these things. So the Sarbanes-Oxley Act came about, and this ensures that the responsibility is on the companies and their CFOs and the CEOs. Okay? Electronic evidence for white-collar crimes is often used in the digital form, and this white-collar crimes in the digital form, the evidence can be easily provided. For instance, as I was telling you before, even if I delete everything, all my files, I still have those files. It's not completely deleted. There are softwares that I can use to get the information of what has been stored. Let's say you go to a website which you don't want to go to or nobody likes you to go to, and then in a company, and then you go to that website. And then you delete it, and you delete the history. Still, people can find where the problems are, where you went. That's very easy to do, okay? Because companies need to make sure that the only legal things are done. Otherwise, that's a big liability for them, right? This basically has turned out to be um, a, a course or a career by itself, and it is called computer forensics. Computer forensics deals with collection and examination, authentication, preservation, and analysis of data from computer storage media so that it can be used as evidence in the court of law. Okay, so that the computer forensics is a very thriving field right now, and a lot of attorneys are the attorneys who have done bachelors in some form or other, and then they've got their legal law degrees, but they don't know anything about computers. They're all getting into computer forensics. They're all trying to understand what computer forensics is right now, and it has become a pretty big deal and pretty big career right now. Okay. So there are controls in information systems, which can be either automated or be manual. And usually you have two types of controls. One is the general control, and another one is application controls. General controls govern design, security, and use of computer programs, and security of data files, and all those things. Software controls, hardware controls, operation controls, security controls, data system controls, data security controls, administrative controls are some of the common general controls that are available to companies. They also have access to application controls, controls that are unique to each computerized application. Okay, so they can have those kind of unique controls. For instance, if you want to have a PDF file which nobody can copy and paste, you have controls there. So it is software related, it is application related. So the controls are in the application itself. It's not outside the application. Input controls, processing, and output controls are some of the application controls as well. And companies and firms actually go through risk assessment periodically. Risk assessment actually determines the level of risk to them if specific activity or a specific process is not properly controlled. And risk assessment looks at types of threat, probability of occurrence, potential losses, value of the threat, expected annual loss in dollars, and so on and so forth. So risk assessment is done in companies periodically. Companies also instigate and implement security policies. Security policies are it can be just a general security policy, or it can be pretty much to the company itself, which is very to the what the company is doing. Basically, it can be related to that. Security policies, there are certain ranks in those security policies, certain ranks of these are information risk rankings. They identify the security goals and the mechanisms for achieving these goals. And the security policies are they are actually provided for all the employees, and the employees are trained in these security policies and procedures. Okay, and there is also AUP, or acceptable use policy, that is also done as a security policy. It basically defines acceptable uses of the company's information resources. Okay. Then comes, you have what is called disaster recovery planning. Disaster recovery planning and business continuity planning. This is usually people call it DRP and BCP. And let's talk a little bit about it. Every company should have contingency planning. Every government should have contingency planning for disasters. Okay, so similarly, every company should have disaster recovery planning. So usually the information systems guys are the ones who come up with this disaster, or who maintains this disaster recovery planning, and it probably engulfs all the functions of the company, including accounting, financing, manufacturing, service, and sales, and strategy, and everything else, HR, and all that stuff. So, disaster recovery planning devises certain plans for restoration of disrupted services. Suppose